Let's see how quickly we can cover everything you need to know for GCSE Biology Paper 2 for WJEC. This is good for higher and foundation tier, double combined and triple separate science. I'll tell you when some of the bigger concepts are for triple, but not what's for higher and foundation, as there's not a lot of difference honestly. And don't forget to check out the Science Shorts app to help you test your knowledge. Let's go. Organisms generally compete for food, water, space and other things like CO2 and light for plants, shelter and mates for animals. Interdependence is the term given to the fact that organisms can rely on each other for these things, and they can form a community. Abiotic factors in an ecosystem are the non-living aspects, for example light, temperature, moisture, soil pH, CO2 and O2 levels in the air. Biotic factors are due to organisms and things like food that's available, predators, prey, other organisms around, pathogens, breeding behaviour and more. We can use a quadrat to estimate the size of a population of an organism in an area by sampling, say, around 10% of the area, taking a mean and then multiplying up for the whole area. Using a quadrat with a transect allows us to observe how population distribution or density changes over a distance. Cells specialize or differentiate depending on the function they need to fulfill. For example, nerve, muscle, root hair, xylem and phloem cells. Stem cells are those that haven't yet specialized. They're found in human and animal embryos and the meristems of plants. That's the top of the shoot. Stem cells are also made in your bone marrow throughout your life as well, but these ones only specialize into blood cells. We can use stem cells to combat conditions like diabetes and paralysis. In fact, right out of the movie The Island, people are now getting clones of themselves made, then harvesting the stem cells, as these won't be rejected by the person. Personally, I think this is a dystopian man-made horror beyond comprehension. You have to weigh up the ethical arguments for yourself. Cloning plants can be used to prevent species from becoming extinct or produce crops with specific characteristics. Eukaryotic cell nuclei contain DNA, which is stored in several chromosomes. Humans have 23 pairs of these in every nucleus, so we call them diploid cells. That's not the case for gametes though, sperm and egg cells. They have just 23, not 23 pairs. They have half the amount, so therefore we call them haploid cells. New cells must constantly be made for growth and repair. They do this by duplicating by mitosis. Here's the process, the mitosis process. The genetic material is duplicated. The nucleus breaks down and one set of each chromosome pair is pulled to opposite sides of the cell. A new nucleus forms in each of these to house the copied chromosomes. We now have two identical cells. By the way, you might hear that the nucleus divides, which isn't quite right, but you'll get the mark if you put that. In order to reproduce sexually, gametes, that's sex cells, must be made. This happens by meiosis, for example, in the testes to make sperm. Chromosomes in a diploid cell, that is 23 pairs for humans, are copied. Similar chromosomes then pair up and genes are swapped between them. The cell then divides to make two diploid cells, which then divide again, along with the chromosomes themselves, to make 4 haploid cells, ready to fuse with another gamete. This is one way that variation occurs in offspring, by the way. The resulting diploid cell then starts to divide via mitosis. Genome is the term given to all the genetic material in an organism. This code is stored in DNA, of course, which is a 2-stranded polymer in a double helix shape. A gene is a section of DNA that codes for a specific protein. The Human Genome Project completed its initial goal in 2003 when scientists mapped out what every gene is responsible for coding. This is powerful because it can help us identify what genes cause diseases or inherited disorders. Genotype is the term given to what specific code is stored in an organism, while phenotype is how that code is expressed in your characteristics, what proteins are made, and that affects your physiology. The monomers between two strands of DNA are called nucleotides, and they're made from a sugar and phosphate group. There are 4 types: A, T, C, and G. You don't need to know what the names are, but A and T always go together in the sequence, as do C and G. Every 3 of these bases, as we call them, are a code for an amino acid. The sequence is copied by mRNA. This copy is then taken out of the nucleus to a ribosome in the cell, where amino acids are connected in the order needed, which makes a protein, the shape of which affects its function. They also need to be folded into the right shape as well. Harmful mutations can change a gene so much that it results in a protein being synthesized that doesn't do the job it's supposed to. We now know that some DNA, however, doesn't directly code for proteins, but influences how other genes are expressed. This is the realm of epigenetics, and is completely changing the way that we view DNA. Some characteristics are controlled by just one gene, like color blindness. These different types of the same gene are called alleles. Usually, characteristics are dependent on two or more genes and how they interact. But keeping things simple, dominant alleles are those that result in a characteristic being expressed, even if there's another allele present, a recessive allele we say. If you have the alleles big B, little b for eye colour, big B being brown, little b being blue, you will have brown eyes. It's only when there's no dominant allele in this case that the recessive allele is expressed. So me having blue eyes, I must have the gene little b, little b. Big B, or little b are homozygous genes, as they only have one type of allele, whereas big B, little b is what we call heterozygous. We can use a Punnett square to predict the probability of a certain phenotype. My parents have brown eyes, but they both have heterozygous alleles for eye colour. There are 3 different outcomes of these combining, with a 25% chance of making me. That's little b, so I'm not so much 1 in a million, more 1 in 4. Eye colour is by the by, but some alleles can result in disorders being inherited. For example, polydactyly, extra fingers or toes, is caused by a dominant allele, while cystic fibrosis is caused by a recessive allele. Even if 2 parents don't have cystic fibrosis, they could still be carrying the recessive allele, so their child could have the disorder. Human DNA contains 23 pairs of chromosomes, but only 1 pair of these determines sex. If you have XX chromosomes, you're female. If you have XY chromosomes, you're male. The expression of these genes affects every cell in your body, every aspect of your physiology. We can also make a Punnett square to show this. As you can see, there's a 50-50 chance of a child being male or female. Variation is a result of the genes inherited from an organism's parents and also environmental factors. Charles Darwin's theory of evolution claims that random variation in offspring will result in some being better suited to their environment than others, and so are more likely to survive and reproduce. Jean-Baptiste Lamarck, however, asserted that adaptation and variation is guided by DNA in response to a changing environment. This was scoffed at for a long time, but we now know there's some truth to this, thanks to the discoveries made in epigenetics like we mentioned. Bacterial resistance to antibiotics is largely considered to be evidence of Darwinian evolution. Bacteria divide, mutations occur, and inevitably a bacterium with an increased resistance will be produced. That's why we only want to use antibiotics when absolutely necessary. It also means you have to complete the whole course of antibiotics. If you don't, weaker bacteria will be killed off, but more resistant ones will still be there, and then they're able to reproduce and make you even more ill. If organisms are able to produce fertile offspring, we say they're of the same species. Tigers and lions have been known to make liger offspring, but as they're infertile, we don't consider tigers and lions to be of the same species. We can selectively breed living things with desired characteristics to enhance these. For example, breeding dogs to produce breeds like Labradors, Collies, and if you're into undesirable characteristics, pugs too. Homeostasis is the term given to an organism's ability to regulate internal conditions even when external conditions change. This is important so crucial chemical reactions involving enzymes can happen at an optimum rate. Amongst other things, our bodies work hard to regulate blood glucose concentration, temperature, and water levels. One way that our body achieves this is with our nervous system. It consists of the CNS, the central nervous system, which includes the brain and spinal cord, and the PNS, the peripheral nervous system, the nerves that go through the rest of the body. A receptor, for example in your skin, detects a change due to a stimulus, like a hot hob. An electrical signal travels to the spine through sensory and relay neurons, that's nerve cells. The signal travels across the gap between these neurons, called the synapse, by a neurotransmitter chemical. Once at the spine, the signal can go to the brain, where you can make the conscious decision to act. The signal then goes back to an effector, like the muscle in your arm, via relay and motor neurons, so that you move your arm. A reflex is when the signal bypasses the brain and goes straight through the spine to the effector. This is a reflex arc. This, of course, is much faster than you making a conscious decision. Glands can also be effectors, which produce specific chemicals your body needs. For example, your salivary glands in your mouth make saliva when you eat food. You can investigate reaction times by holding the bottom of a ruler between a person's finger and thumb and dropping it without warning. Then you can measure the distance it falls before they catch it. Do this multiple times and take the mean average. Not too many times though, as their nervous systems will start to get a bit better at reacting to this. You can introduce an independent variable, like a stimulant, for example coffee or a sugary drink, or a depressant, which will have the opposite effect, although I can't really think of any that are legal for you guys at the minute. Then you can see how they decrease or increase reaction time respectively. You could calculate the reaction time from the distance using S equals half 80 squared, but you'll never be expected to do that in a paper. But it is something you could mention if you were asked a 6-marker on this maybe. Your eyes are the most genius cameras ever made. Accommodation is the term given to the eye's ability to change the shape of the lens in order to focus light that comes from objects that are different distances away on the retina. To focus light that comes from objects far away, the ciliary muscles relax and the suspensory ligaments tighten. They're both connected to the lens. This results in the lens becoming thinner, and that means the light is only refracted a little bit, and that focuses the light on the retina. To focus on near objects, the opposite is true. The ciliary muscles contract, the suspensory ligaments slacken, and the lens becomes fatter or thicker. That means it becomes more powerful, so light is refracted more, which means that the light coming from the object still converges, that means meets, focuses on the retina, so you see a clear image. The pupil, the hole in the iris, can change size depending on the light intensity hitting the eye. The cornea is the transparent outer layer where light enters the eye. It has a slight lensing effect itself, while the white surface that covers the rest of the eye is called the sclera. The light is focused on the retina at the back of the eye, which consists of cells that respond to light. Some of these cells only detect light intensity, not color. These are called rods, while there are 3 different types of cones which detect green, blue or red wavelengths of light, a mix of which will produce the colors we then perceive when the signal reaches our brain via the optic nerve. Myopia is the medical term for short-sightedness. You can't focus on far objects. Hyperopia is long-sightedness, the opposite. Glasses or contact lenses are usually used to mitigate this by slightly converging or diverging the light before it enters the eye. Laser eye surgery changes the shape of the cornea to achieve the same effect. Thermoregulation is your body controlling its internal temperature by the brain sensing blood temperature, then sending nervous and hormonal signals to various effectors around your body in order that your body loses heat to its surroundings more slowly or quickly. For example, if you're too hot, sweat glands in your skin cause water to cover the surface. It evaporates, taking heat away from your body quickly. Blood vessels also dilate, widen, to increase blood flow to the skin to increase the rate of heat loss. We call this vasodilation. If you're too cold, we have vasoconstriction instead, hence you go pale. You also shiver, which causes your muscles to produce more heat. The endocrine system is a system of glands that produce or secrete hormones that travel to effectors via the blood. This is, of course, slower than any signal carried by the nervous system. The pituitary gland in your brain can be considered the main or master gland, as it produces hormones in response to stimuli that travel to other glands in your body in order to make them start producing certain chemicals. Examples are the pancreas, which produces insulin, the thyroid, which controls all sorts of things like growth and heart, muscle and digestive function, and more, the adrenal glands, which produce adrenaline, and the ovaries or testes, which release eggs or sperm, depending on which you have. Speaking of the pancreas then, it's involved in making sure your blood glucose levels aren't too high or low. If they're too high, the pancreas secretes insulin, which causes glucose to move from the blood into your cells to be used for respiration. Any excess glucose can be converted into glycogen to store energy, and that's done by the liver. If these levels are too low, on the other hand, the pancreas produces another hormone called glucagon, which causes the liver and muscles to turn glycogen back into glucose, ready to be used. Type 1 diabetes is what you have when your pancreas can't produce enough insulin, and you have to take insulin injections to do the job instead. Type 2 is when your cells no longer absorb the glucose as they should, so you have to be careful with your diet, and if you're overweight or obese, you have a much higher risk of developing this. A bit more detail about how they work then. Antidiuretic hormone, or ADH, is produced in the pituitary gland, which travels to the kidneys and causes the tubules in your kidney to reabsorb more water into the bloodstream, so less then goes to the bladder. If the water level is too high, less ADH is produced, so the kidneys cause more water to be lost in urine. In both cases, the water level returns to normal, so this is an example of negative feedback. Negative feedback might sound like it's a bad thing, but all it means is that the body responds in such a way as to return things to normal. If your kidneys aren't working properly, dialysis is required. Essentially, your blood is sent through a machine that does the same job as your kidneys. this doesn't happen, the buildup of urea can poison you. Bacteria multiply by binary fission. We can do a practical on this by producing a culture on agar in a petri dish using aseptic technique, that is, making sure nothing else contaminates the culture. We lift the lid of the dish towards a flame, which causes other microbes in the air to move upwards and away from the dish, and it destroys them too. Using sterilized equipment, we can either put a drop of bacteria culture in the middle or spread it all around to create a lawn and put spots of different antibiotics on top instead. We put a few bits of tape around the dish to hold the lid on, but not all the way round, otherwise air won't get in and the bacteria will respire anaerobically. We don't want that. We incubate it at 25 degrees for a couple of days, say. Once the culture has grown, we can either calculate the size of the culture from an initial drop or the area in which bacteria did not grow or were killed by an antibiotic to then compare with others. In both cases, we use pi r squared or pi d squared over 4 to calculate the area of these circles. Communicable diseases are caused by pathogens. That can be viruses, bacteria, fungi, or protists. Protists are single-cell parasites. They all reproduce in your body and cause damage to it, but viruses can't reproduce by themselves. A virus, in fact, is just a protein casing that surrounds genetic code that it injects into your cells, which causes the cell to produce more copies of the virus. The cell explodes and the virus goes on to infect more cells. Creepy, right? Measles is a virus that causes a rash, and it can actually be pretty deadly too. It's spread by droplets from sneezes or coughs. HIV is an STD, or STI, sexually transmitted disease or infection, that compromises your immune system. That's called AIDS for short. It can also be spread by people sharing needles. Bacteria, on the other hand, release toxins that damage your body's cells, like salmonella in undercooked food or gonorrhea, another STD that causes a yellow discharge from the genitalia. Not nice. Fungi do something similar, like athlete's foot, while protists do all sorts of different things. For example, malaria is caused by a protist that burrows into red blood cells to multiply, then they burst out, destroying the red blood cell in the process. It's spread by mosquitoes, so we say mosquitoes are the vector for this disease. It's not only animals though, plants are particularly susceptible to fungal infections like rose black spot. Purple black spots appear on the leaves and then they fall off. Such infections can be treated with fungicides. Tobacco mosaic virus affects plants by discoloring leaves due to inhibiting chlorophyll production. Less photosynthesis occurs, and that causes stunted growth. So I hope you found that helpful. Leave a like and a comment if you did, and click on the card to take you to the playlist for all of the papers, and don't forget to check out the Quiz Shorts app to help you test your knowledge. And I'll see you next time.